Last night for Kol Nidre, I shared about our always moving earth, about these times of tectonic shifts we are experiencing that are both new and ancient, about how even when we might want the ground not to move, it turns out that the tectonic plates of our earth are always moving, either converging into mountains, diverging, or transforming. And how this last year has felt like our landscapes, the earth underneath us, our worlds have been transforming in our communities, in our lives. And here in Southern California, in the past couple of months, we've been experiencing the kind of transform plate boundaries, where pieces of earth continually collide with one another, rub up against another, and sometimes their edges abruptly crack or slip and then release huge amounts of pent-up energy. The rocks, the plates of the earth, they need to be in motion. Earth needs to be in motion. And when the motion gets stuck, they need to move, so one will move out, and that makes an earthquake. And that's what it has felt like, so much motion this year. The earth, each other, bumping up, converging, diverging, God willing, transforming, moving our landscapes into new forms. In May, we had an earthquake in the Ojai Valley. In June, there was 2 small quakes in El Sereno, then a trio of tremors in the Costa Mesa, Newport Beach border, and then the Puente Hills fault has really been moving. We had one in June in Highland Park and another one on August 12th of 4.6. Right under Highland Park. And I want to say that I was thinking about this theme already. We had already decided on it. And then that was the day we were sending it all out to you. So we were preparing the email saying tectonic shifts, high holidays, 5785. And then there was that earthquake. And then I learned just 2 days ago on Thursday morning when there was an article in the LA Times sharing that this year so far we've had the highest annual number of these seismic sequences with at least 1.4 or higher, 15 of them. 15 independent seismic sequences so far this year, and it's the highest total in 65 years. And connected to what I shared about last night about uncertainty, we of course want to know, does that mean that there's gonna be a big one? And I so appreciate what the researcher said. Well, one thing's been clear, nobody has found patterns that are statistically meaningful at all before big earthquakes. That's like comforting, and also like not comforting. They're like, we've been studying it for 100 years, and I'll tell you what we've learned. We've learned there's no patterns. Okay, great, good to know. Thank you for scientists for that honesty and humility. So the earth is moving. And with it, last night we talked about uncertainty and what happens when people brace against uncertainty and try to make things certain and then are pulled into extremist ideologies that create a false certainty. It was intense and maybe hard to hear. And that is part of the story. But there's another part of the story of tectonic shifts. And that is of the possibilities that tectonic shifts can create. New landscapes that we cannot have imagined before the earth started moving. And they are ancient, this earth moving. We talked about how they were in our prayer, the Unatana Tokef, the earth shaking. Also, they're at key moments for our people in the Torah. We're told that when we come before Mount Sinai that the people shake and then the mountain shakes. When we're in the wilderness and the rebellious Korach comes to say things with a big army, the earth opens and swallows him up. And in the teachings and conversations of our rabbis of late antiquity, captured in the Talmud, there is an incredible story of the earth moving. It is a well-known story from the Talmud about the oven of Achnai. It's in Bava Metzia, and the earth moves inside of it. And with it, in this moment of earth moving, it is a moment of claiming a new paradigm. That's part of what can happen when the earth moves. It can move us out of where we've been and into somewhere else. So the discussion, the argument in the Beit Midrash, the house of study, that precedes this earth movement was about an oven and whether or not it was tahor, ritually pure and okay to use, or not. So Rabbi Eliezer answers all the questions and says that it's pure, that it is okay to use. But all of the other sages say no. So then it goes on from there, and it says that Rabbi Eliezer answered beyond that all of the questions that anyone's ever had. And they said, Im halacha kamoti, he says, if the halacha, if the law or the way to go is with me, then right now, charuv ze yochiach, the carob tree is about to prove it. So I'm trying to use words, and you guys aren't believing it. So now the carob tree is going to prove it. So right at that moment, this carob tree uproots from its place, and it moves. The sages see this, and they say, okay, but here's the thing. We do not bring proof from a carob tree. Okay, he says, how about this? If the law, im halacha kamoti, if it's with me, then the water channel will prove it. And right then, the water channel nearby, boom, started flowing in the opposite direction. You can imagine what they said. We don't take proof from a water channel. He went on and said, okay, if the law is as I say, then the walls, okay, the earth will move again, and it will move these walls of the house of study, of the Beit Midrash, and they will prove it. So the walls of the house of study started to incline, but then another of the sages, Rabbi Yehoshua, looked at them, talked to the walls, and said, look, walls, if scholars defeat each other in matters of the law, how does it make things better for you? So they did not fall all the way because of the honor of Rabbi Yehoshua, and they did not strengthen because of the honor of Rabbi Eliezer. So they were like this, inclining. He's not going to stop. So he says, if the law is according to me, then the heavens themselves will prove it. We are going to hear a bat kol, a heavenly voice that will prove that this is the way to do this. This is the way to rule on this. So sure enough, a bat kol, a heavenly voice came out and said, I love it, this phrase, what do you have with him? What's the problem here? The law is with him in every place. Bat kol, heavenly voice, law is with him. Group of sages, this is the response. They heard that. Rabbi Yehoshua stood up on his feet and said, Lo bashamayim hi. The Torah is not in heaven. Okay? The Torah was already given at Sinai. We're not going to pay attention to a bat kol, a heavenly voice, because God gave us, and you wrote it in Sinai. You wrote it in the Torah that we were given at Sinai after the majority to incline. That's what we were told in the book of Shmot in Exodus. And as a coda to this part, Rabbi Natan met the prophet Eliyahu, Elijah, and said to him, right at that moment where that argument happened, and Rabbi Yehoshua said that and all that was going down, what did the Holy One say at that hour? God smiled and said, my children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. This is far out, everybody. This is incredible, and it's and if the only thing you get out of this is like, maybe I should study that Talmud. Yes, you should. We're going to help you with that. But this is far out. It's a paradigm shift. The earth is moving a tree to the other side. The earth is moving the walls. The water changes direction, and even a heavenly voice, a bat kol. No, the sages say, claiming their own tectonic shift. This is not about a direct voice from God. We as a group of sages will work together to understand and make choices, and those choices made as a group. The majority, with the minority voice preserved in the text, will be what we do as halakha, Jewish law, because this is what we have learned from Torah, and God gave us the Torah. And not only that, but God's going to celebrate this. This tradition, this creative, divinely inspired, unfolding Jewish tradition has allowed us to continue as a Jewish people, to grow and thrive and to change in always new contexts. We hold close to tradition and we are willing to change. It was a tectonic shift in these rabbis of late antiquity, and it continues today, and it was their response to crisis times they were dealing with. Major change, the loss of the temple, the destruction, everything the way they used to be. And now they needed to claim a new paradigm, a new way forward. There is much, much more in the story of the oven of Achai. It goes into being, in a big picture way, about how we should also treat each other and the ways that he was not treated well, and there's more to learn. But I want to stay right here in this idea of it being a tectonic shift in law. We are in crisis times on so many levels. We talked about it last night. Zachary shared about it. The bishop shared about it. We can't miss it. Everywhere around us, we're in these overlapping layers of crisis. And there are ways that tectonic shifts, embracing against them, people trying to stop change, is leading us in places that are not good. And there's the possibility of what we can do when we move with the change into creating new landscapes. And one of the ways that that is happening is in relationship to our earth and the planet and our survival here. There is a tectonic shift that's happening, and it's happening in the law. It's happening within the law about how we approach the earth. It is a transformational tectonic shift. Similar to how I said about the oven of Achai, it is far out, and it is having a beautiful impact. The rights of nature movement is about seismic shifts in the law. This year, I had the honor of being at the Pioneers Conference in Berkeley and listening directly from those who have imagined this and acted this shift into law and are continuing to act from this new shift all over the world. The Center for Democratic and Environmental Rights, the CDER, has been at the forefront of this movement, and here's how they describe it. Rights of nature laws secure legal rights of the natural environment, including species and ecosystems. Legal rights, including the right to exist. I mean, sad that it has to be said that way, but the right to exist, to flourish, to regenerate, to evolve, and to be restored. The rights of nature movement reflects a growing understanding that nature deserves our respect and our protection and legal rights, a fundamental shift in humankind's relationship with nature, from one of use and exploitation, land as property, to one of care and protection. In this rights of nature movement, there is tshuva. There is repair and return. Because it's saying it's a fundamental shift, but really, ancient peoples and indigenous traditions have been relating to this way of the earth for a long time. There's a story in the Jewish tradition of two men fighting over the lines of their property. And they're at it. These neighbors are at it. And I know my property starts here. No, my property starts there. And they go back and forth. And they go at it and at it and at it. And finally, they're like, let's call the rabbi. So the rabbi comes in. And he's tell me where you think your land is. Tell me where you think your land is. And they're showing. And the rabbi then puts their ear to the ground, down to the ground. So just a second, I'm going to ask the earth. Puts the ear to the ground. Oh, yeah, that's funny because the ground does not say that it belongs to either of you. The earth belongs to itself, to the divine, to the Holy One, to Great Spirit, to Source of all. Since 2006, local communities, states, and countries, as well as tribal and First Nations, have established laws, adopted policies, and issued court decisions to recognize and protect the legal rights of nature. They've also put in mechanisms for people and in governments to enforce and defend these rights. This is a major shift in how environmental law sees the earth. It's a tectonic shift that can reform how, at this point, we've been relating to the world around us. Thomas Lindsay, who works at the CDER and was a pioneer in this work and is who I heard speak, shared that when he went to first speak in law schools and environmental law programs and to share this thinking and idea, the professors literally got up and walked out. This was a change and they were not up for it. But the students stayed for a long time asking questions. He was the one, Thomas Lindsay, that brought the first case to court in 2006. It was on behalf of a town called Tamaqua. Hope I'm saying that right. Anybody from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh? It's halfway between. And throughout the 20th century in Tamaqua, mining was the essential activity, but it had declined. And then this issue cropped up where the owners that had these pits, there were these huge pits that were left over from when there used to be mining. The owners started offering them to be a dumping place for toxic sludge that was combining human waste with hospital waste and chemical waste from industries, coming as far as New York and New Jersey. And the dumping involved sludge and river dredging and flying ash, and there were no protections being offered against leaching. Runoff went into the rivers that ran by Tamaqua homes, and that fed the larger areas that led into Philadelphia. A lot of people were drinking contaminated water, and 2 kids died of staph infections after exposure. The law of this land had recognized the rights of corporations as persons, and this town became the first municipality in the United States to recognize legal rights for nature. It explicitly said that borough residents, rural, natural communities, and ecosystems shall be considered persons for the purpose of enforcement of the civil rights of those residents, natural communities, and ecosystems. And this allowed them to begin making the changes they need to make. And since around 100 communities have passed these ordinances, it's a return to ancient practices. And because of that, many tribal nations and First Nations people are on the cutting edge of this in law as well. The White Earth Band of Ojibwe, the Yurok, and the Menominee have enacted rights of nature and policies. And Ecuador, the whole country, wrote it into their constitution in 2008. Bolivia, Panama, Spain, Uganda, New Zealand have passed national rights of nature law. And local now laws are beginning to exist in the United States, Canada, Brazil. Courts in Colombia, Bangladesh, Peru, and India have recognized that rivers and other ecosystems possess legal rights. It is a paradigm shift, a fundamental change. The Yurok Tribal Council is part of this movement, declaring the personhood of the Klamath River in 2019. And they're the first to do so in North America. And how did they learn about this? They were given support from Maori leaders in New Zealand. In 2017, Maori iwis, or tribes, in a treaty process with the government, got the government to adopt the rights of the Whanganui River. The river now has its own legal standing in court. And the Yurok, who for so many years have been fighting to protect the Klamath River, have now gotten to the point where they were able to get the Iron Gate dams along the California and Oregon borders removed, allowing water to flow for more than 40 miles for the first time in more than a century. The salmon, so central to the people, had been dying in this dammed up river. And when they saw the last piece of this dam removed, the tribal leaders and activists embraced and laughed and cried. Brooke Thompson, a Yurok tribal member, a restoration engineer, and a doctoral student at UC Santa Cruz, never thought that this would be possible. When she was 7 years old, a little kid, she watched in the river this mass fish kill where like thousands and thousands of fish are just floating in the river from the dams, blocking where they go for their ancestral spawning areas and degrading the water quality and creating these toxic algae blooms. Can you imagine a 7-year-old seeing this? And then from there, she dedicated many, many years of her life. And she stood there watching a dam be removed. The biggest thing for me, she said, the significance of the dam removal project is just hope. Understanding that change can be made. Community, I know it feels like it's not possible, that we are overwhelmed by all that is happening. But part of what happens when the earth moves, when there are tectonic shifts, where things are in crisis and in flux, room is created for changes that we did not think were even possible, or maybe that we couldn't imagine before the ground started moving. Tectonic shift is inside of how we see the earth and the species around us. It's also in our own lives. There may be a tectonic shift happening in your life right now. It may be one that you asked for, wanted, or maybe it's one that has happened to you unexpectedly and it has knocked you off your feet. They may be ones we initiate or ones we need to integrate. When a long relationship ends or a marriage, often I see big changes in those who are going through that ending. Big changes in the landscape of your lives. After the ending, one partner might start working on themselves in ways that the other partner was asking them to do for years. Often one partner might be spending more time with their children in a way that the other partner may have been wanting them to do for years. And now they are doing it. After a death or a loss or a major diagnosis, changes can be made in the plates in our lives to open to new landscapes, new possibilities that can emerge that we didn't know were possible. Tectonic shifts. This might not be what you wanted, but you are here now. The earth has moved. It is not going to stop moving. And I have seen how there is a willingness to look at these places that were out of view before. I couldn't see that landscape until now, until there is a release. Maybe it's not what you wanted, but you are here now, and you can begin taking actions in new directions. I know it can feel a lot, and it can feel so scary. This is the time to gather support around you, to let a new landscape come into formation. What can be possible now? Hills that then move to mountains. What are the steps you can take in this new land that were not possible before? I remember seeing, feeling, and experiencing how someone in our community, I will call her Bonnie, how her life opened in new ways when her mother died. She did not want to lose her mother. She grieved her with the whole fiber of her being. And as the months went by, these tectonic shifts began to happen. The landscape was moving around her. She didn't want to be here, but she was here. She began to stop doing things that didn't seem important to her anymore. She began to pursue learning and spirituality in ways that opened up new possibilities. And she took the opportunity, consciously and on purpose, to be a part of the joy of living. Her kid had a program in another state, and rather than just putting on the plane or going and dropping her off, she went and said, okay, well, my kid's in this program for 2 weeks. I'm going to spend the 2 weeks exploring on my own, seeing friends I haven't seen in years. Taking the opportunity to dive into her life. She approached her daily and her weekly schedule differently, moving into her schedule repeated times for her own learning, for her spirituality, for her being with people she loved. And slowly and over time, this led her to shifting her career and the work she is now doing in the world. Maybe you are in one of these tectonic shifts right now that are happening to you, and maybe you are not. But what could be a change? What could be a tectonic shift you can bring into your life without needing the loss or the upset? This is what Yom Kippur is about. This is what we're asked to do. We're asked to step away from the world, to root into what's most important, to have this, in some ways, this theater of our prayer and our ritual that asks us, that pushes us, that makes us think about what would happen if this is the year that you die. What would happen if this is a year of wandering, as we're told in the Unatana Tokef. This is an opportunity to look and feel the earth that's moving under you and to say, what is the landscape I'm wanting to shape? We step out of our lives for this day, sacred day, so that we can make these kinds of expansive shifts beyond the limits of what we think we can and cannot do for our lives, for our beloveds, for this world. I mean, remove a dam. Give rights to nature. Get sober. Say yes. Say no. Tectonic shifts. And when we start to do them, the willingness and the repetition and the doing of these shifts makes room for more and more and more that we could not have imagined possible before. The same folks who pioneered the Rights of Nature movement, CDER, they are now in the mix of a new shift. Their words, I said seismic, they said seismic. Here's their words. The pioneering work of the Rights of Nature movement has led to seismic shifts in environmental law. Now, the next place, the Land That Owns Itself program, builds on this change, taking that next big systemic leap so that nature is not only protected with legal rights, but is moved out from under human control and ownership to become self-owned and self-governed. Owned itself, as ancients have always known. And friends, as a community, this community, Nefesh, came out of a seismic shift. The landscape that changed with a big, unexpected change in my life, through big willingness to shape landscapes together that we didn't know were possible. And now we have questions to continue wondering about. What is it now that we can fill a room this big? What does it mean to have a building or to not, to be in shared space or not? What are the seismic shifts, the new landscapes that are continuing for our community? We are all in this process of moving on the moving ground together. How do we continue to create this community on our always moving ground? May you feel the shifts around you and shape the new changing landscapes. May you feel yourself in motion. May we feel the earth in motion and learn how to move.